Consistency has been the trademark of Utah football. It may finally result in a championship for the Utes in the Pac-12 in 2018. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, previewing and predicting all the Power 5 teams. And we've started in the Pac-12. We made our way through the North. Check out those videos. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. That helps drive the engine. We're making our way through the Pac-12 South, the weakest division in college football. All right. This has been a dilemma for me. I have pored over this decision between Utah and USC. And so this is my take on the Utes. The continuity and consistency I speak of is all the way at the top of the athletic structure there at Utah. It's with 31-year athletic director Chris Hill. He finally retired just a few months ago. But under his watch, the Utah men's basketball and the football programs have thrived. He hired, of course, Kyle Whittingham 15 years ago, who has been a tremendous coach, leader there, and with a sparkling postseason record. And get this, in one-possession games. And this really speaks to coaching over the long haul. In one particular season, there can be a luck factor. But over the long haul, this speaks to coaching. In one-possession games, Kyle Whittingham was 32-12 before last season. 32-12. Think about that. That record over time should even out. The luck of the game, the bounces of the ball should even out. 32-12. Last season, in a 7-6 campaign, 3-6 in the Pac-12, Utah went 3-7 in those type of games. Over the last 10 games, Utah has only won 3 one-possession games out of 10. All right, Tyler Huntley comes back at quarterback. He's got loads of experience. He's not a great player. He's a very good player, takes care of the football, strong enough arm, mobile, 500-plus yards rushing, 6 touchdowns, threw 15 touchdowns, 10 picks, 64% completion percentage for Tyler Huntley. Zach Moss is back at running back. He had 1,173 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 29 catches out of the backfield. Now, the wide receivers at Utah, this has long been a difficult position group because they have some decent players. They have good players, and they lost their best players from last season, but they typically don't have explosive players. And this is an issue this season with this group. Samson Nakua, 29 catches, 1 touchdown, comes back. Damon Simpkins had 29 catches, 1 touchdown. Sound familiar? Ciosi Mariner, he comes back as well. You've got Brian Thompson at 5 catches. All right, a fine addition to this group would be a player who's coming back from an LDS mission. That's Britain Covey, 2 years away from football, but back in 2015, he had over 500 yards receiving. And now he's back in the fold for Utah, and they really need him. There is not a wide receiver on this team that averaged more than 12 yards per reception that's coming back. And the lack of explosiveness has cost this team when they've had really good teams in trying to get over the hump and beat the elite teams. They have 4 offensive linemen back. That's key because the offensive line last year was pretty marginal, but these 4 players in particular should be better. Again, the explosiveness or the lack thereof hurts this team, and it measures out in the metrics across the board. If you look at the advanced metrics, Utah always consistent offensively. They convert 3rd and shorts. The explosive plays are not there. They need some of those in the big games. And we'll talk about that in just a second. Defensively, we talked consistency from the top. 11 straight defensive performances in the S&P Plus, top 40 in the nation. Leki Fotu anchors the middle. He's one of the best in the business at doing just that. Defensive end Bradley Ane had 10 tackles for loss and 7 sacks. Very good player. In the secondary, which should be the strength of the defense, Julian Blackman, 48 tackles, 4 interceptions. Jalen Johnson, 25 tackles, and also linebacker Chase Hansen, who's probably the best player on the defense with 51 total tackles. Secret weapon here, the punter, Mitch Wisnowski, may be the best punter in college football. He averaged 44 yards per kick last season. He's back. Matt Gay as well, hitting on 30 of 34 field goals. So they're sound in the kicking game. Their special teams were down last year, but usually airtight. So that's a factor that doesn't get typically factored in. And the special teams at Utah have been great. Okay, the non-conference play is not an issue here. They've got a date at Northern Illinois, which is a bit tricky against the Huskies. BYU at home. They go 3-0 non-conference. This is where I'm struggling here. I would love to pick Utah to win the Pac-12 championship, or at least the South Division, and get to the title game. They have the toughest Pac-12 schedule. If they had Arizona's schedule, I would be selecting them to win the Pac-12 South. They have to play Washington, Stanford, and Oregon. Arizona, for example, doesn't have to play either Washington or Stanford. So they have the toughest in-conference schedule in the Pac-12. No Cal, no Oregon State. That's a gimme win against the Beavers, and Cal most likely another win. This is the formula for a championship in the division for Utah. They play Washington at home. They play at Stanford very early in the conference schedule. They have to win one of those two games. So they split there, Washington, Stanford. That's going to be very difficult, especially considering Washington's probably the better of the two, and they have them at home. So if they lose that one, then they need to pull out a win at Stanford. Okay, split those two, and they've got USC at home. 2 years ago, they beat the Trojans at home, even though USC, with that Sam Darnold team that won the Rose Bowl, lost at Utah. So the Utes won that game against USC 2 years ago at home. They need a duplicate performance because that's the formula. They have to beat USC head-to-head. Otherwise, it's a two-game difference in the standings. They have to split with Washington and Stanford unless the Pac-12 South just becomes a just free-for-all and everybody's just frayed and you've got a bunch of 5-4, 6-3 teams. That could happen. My head tells me because of the schedule, Utah is going to have a difficult time winning the Pac-12 South. I've got them at 9-3 and 6-3. But beat USC at home. Split the two games with Oregon and Stanford. They can even trip up elsewhere, and they go 7-2 in the conference. USC has a date at Stanford, and of course they're going to lose the game under this scenario at Utah. So they could go 7-2 as well, meaning USC. So that's the play here. USC, Utah. I'm going Utes at 7-2. I'm making the decision right now. Utes pull off that formula. They beat USC at home in October. They split the games with Washington and Stanford, and they don't trip up against anyone else, which is going to be difficult. They have to go on the road to Arizona. So Utah goes 7-2, which gives them a 10-2 overall record. I got 9-3 and 6-3 right in front of me. I'm changing it up. This gives a win to somebody else in the conference because I had Utah at 6-3. And so it goes to Colorado. Maybe they don't go 1-8, or maybe Cal instead of 3-6. I certainly considered them at 4-5. And we will be back with my USC prediction. So it's Utah 10-2, 7-2 in the conference as they find a narrow path through a very difficult schedule for the Utes. Like, comment, and subscribe. I would love to hear your prediction on Utah football here in 2018. It's going to be interesting. And, of course, join our mailing list, MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Leave your name and your email address, and you will be on the mailing list, which begins with Week 1 of college football with stats and trends and information and channel updates that you will not get anywhere else. Right here at MarkRogersTV, send the email to Gmail, MarkRogersTV at Gmail. And, of course, your Utah prediction right here on MarkRogersTV.